Hey, welcome back to the Cage Rage podcast. I'm Miguel Dorati, and I'm joined by my wrestling insider, Snake Eyes. And we're going to talk a little bit of a different flavor today. We've been concentrating on WWE and the odds, and that's how the CRP's ventures into pro wrestling started. And the emergence of AEW has gotten us a little further into pro wrestling. And with the emergence of AEW, we had Snake Eyes join us to go over their events and get some more insight as to the whole deep world of pro wrestling. So this is more of that, going down that path with Snake Eyes here. The fact is if you watch WWE and that's all you watch, you probably have a certain image of pro wrestling, but there's a lot going on there. And what they call the indie scene is actually, many different scenes out there and stuff, but it's a fascinating world where, some of the wrestling is very intense and amazing in terms of that's where, the big shows get their athletes from. And it's sort of like an impromptu feeder system. And then some of the stuff that you see out there, goes maybe beyond the world of what pro wrestling is and just heads into just kind of some semi-sanctioned violence of some kind. So it has many different levels, and we're here to talk about it a little bit, get an education on it. And I believe my partner Snake Eyes here has some experience in what they call the deathmatch type wrestling. And what we're going to do and base this conversation on is on Game Changer Wrestling's August 30th event. They had an event go down in Chicago a day before the AEW's big all-out pay-per-view, and Snake Eyes was there. So let's go ahead, Snake Eyes. Go ahead and introduce the show, talk a little bit about getting there and stuff, and then we'll go match by match.
Sure. Well, I've been hearing bits and pieces about this GCW, this Game Changer Wrestling. I've seen a few clips online about it. I knew it was ultra violent, kind of had that hardcore death match feel to it. And then my buddy Bucky said, do you remember watching ECW on TV? And I said, yeah, man, of course. And he goes, Game Changer's just a new branded ECW, man. They have a mix of everything, and their hardcore is just a little bit more hardcore. So I was like, all right, and we got down to the hotel for All Out, and it was the night before. The show didn't start till 11 p.m. So I mean, we had plenty of time. So we bought 3 tickets and we went. And honestly, it was. I know All Out was an amazing show, at least for me anyway, just because being a fan of most of that roster. But that Game Changer Wrestling show was everything I would hope pro wrestling would be. I mean, there was a mix of old and new and violent and lucha libre, and uh, I think we're gonna have a nice little discussion here. I'm gonna teach you some things about Game Changer Wrestling today.
All right, and it's an interesting path to go down because and like I said, the indie scene, it's something I think you gotta put your finger on the pulse of it and start to immerse yourself if you're going to get into it and stuff like that. Because if you see the wrong show at the wrong time and stuff like that, you might get a wrong impression. And once again, there are also different levels to this stuff. There's some of these shows that are just waiting for a chance to really highlight their stuff, and then there's other shows that will remain regional and look regional in terms of if you're looking for Barnum and Bailey and that type of show, that's not what you get in some of these other shows here and stuff. Very bare bones stuff and things like that. So it's not likely to have the same appeal as the mass produced stuff, but that gives it its own unique appeal too. It's kind of like trading rapper tapes and stuff like that, in the old days, or band tapes and things like that, where you're getting like bootlegs and things. It has that feel of like a culture, like a subculture and stuff. So anyway, let's get right into the show here. And the show was led off by a tag team bout. The first tag team was called Violence is Forever, and that's Dominic Guarini and Kevin Koo. and they defeated a team called the Filthy Fucks. The Filthy Fucks, Eric Stevens and Tom Lawler, as stated MMA veteran Tom Lawler. So go ahead, take us through that fight.
Sure. Well, the show started, and I was standing right in front of the commentator. So Kevin Gill told me to move out of the way, and I almost wanted to smack him in the face because I hate Kevin Gill. But nonetheless, I was super bumped. I've never seen Filthy Tom Lawler in person before. I've seen a lot of his stuff on YouTube for his MLW matches. He also worked for Major League Wrestling. Um, and Eric Stevens used to work back in the day in TNA, so I was familiar with that name. I wasn't too familiar with Violence is Forever, but it was a pretty solid match. There was a lot of hard hitting, obviously with Filthy Tom being a former MMA fighter. I mean, he was laying his shit in. I mean, Game Changer is very hard hitting. Like I was feeling those chops in my chest from Tom Lawler, and the action was nonstop. There was a couple of high spots, but yeah, the somehow the two known guys lost. It was kind of weird, but the crowd was hot to start the show, and I think it was a good way to set the tone. It was the only normal tag match, so I think it was a good idea to start with that tag match and kind of ease things into it. You started with the hard hitting and the crowd being hot, which obviously carried over to the next match. I'll let you introduce that one.
Well, take me through the fight. How did Violence is Forever finish the fight? Because all I've got is defeated the Filthy Fox, but I don't have a rundown. What did they use a signature finisher, or was it chaos at the end? Take us through the last couple minutes or the last seconds of the fight.
Yeah, it was pretty chaotic. I'm not sure which member of Violence is Forever. He just hit a pretty big super kick, and it was like a kind of like a total elimination from the Eliminators back in the ECW days.
And so, taking it from there, we had a Homicide defeating Ethan Page. And tell us what you know about this. If I'm not mistaken, well, Homicide could be one of those names that multiple people use, but there are a couple of Homicides that have good reps on the indie scene, or at least one, if I'm not mistaken. So, why don't you fill me in and clean up my mess there?
Well, that is the one you're thinking of, the notorious 187 Homicide from TNA, Ring of Honor. And Ethan Page, he also works for Impact Wrestling. So, two pretty well names on the indie scene. Not really, I wouldn't associate either name with any deathmatch hardcore wrestling. So this was like, the Dean Malenko, Chris Benoit. They brought the more in ring work, so to say. Ethan Page, I wasn't too familiar with Ethan Page. I've seen a couple of his Impact matches, but obviously, as you said, Homicide has a long history in professional wrestling. Um, Dude looks amazing. I was actually hoping he was going to join LAX at All Out, but I guess that's not a thing anymore. But yeah, Notorious 187, he hit a RKO off the top rope. And he got the 1, 2, 3 in the middle of the ring. There wasn't any hardcore spots or anything like that. It was a good clean match. Ethan Page, wanted to wrestle his style, which is more a um ground attack and wear down your opponent, whereas obviously Homicide is a kicker and a striker and pretty badass individual and all around.
Moving on with the card here, we had what looks like a three-man tag of Los Serpientes and Los Beasts. And we won't get into Spanish grammar here, but we had a Reyes, Laredo Kid, and Ophidian taking on Black Taurus, Gringo Loco, and KTB. Take us through this one.
I couldn't keep my eyeballs couldn't keep up with how fast these guys were going. I've never seen an actual lucha libre match in person before, so I was actually really super excited. And then obviously Gringo Loco is a white dude, but he was a pretty stocky white guy. Like I was kind of interested to see where that was going. And then Black Taurus was a dude in a big cowboy, like a devil cowboy suit. Like it was. I mean, their gimmicks were on point, man. And dude, it was honestly back and forth, flying from one guy to one side to the outside, and headstands on the top rope, and everything that a fan would hope to see in a lucha libre match. So again, not to reference it back to history, but this is kind of like Rey Mysterio and Juventud Guerrera in ECW days. They they tore down the house. Like I don't know how anything could have followed that because it was so. it was actually awe inspiring. Like I'm a cruiserweight fighter, and dude, like that was pretty cool. Like I only wish I had an eighth of the speed that those guys were going. I mean, that was amazing.
Cool, cool. All right, dude. I'm gonna take a quick short break. We're gonna hook up again in 5 minutes from another link, but I've got to step away from the camera for a minute.
That was good, boss.
Okay.